What is happening with traffic in Valor Village? That is what we're talking about
Crazy.
today. Yeah, that is our discussion today, and it is great to hear that the city of Vaughan is taking a look at the traffic situation going on right in our backyard in the Lawford area. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's upcoming from the city and have, I guess, a little bit of sharing about our own thoughts about what's been and what hopefully will be with the traffic situation right in our backyard.
Yeah. So if you aren't familiar with the Lawford area, we're talking the area southwest, or no, sorry, no, southwest, northwest of Major Mac and Weston Road. So there's a little map there that we're talking about, and that's a part of the community of Valor Village. And it's pretty nuts especially in the morning as you're trying to get out, either dropping the kids off or for school or getting out yourself for work, as well as in the afternoon. So we're happy, as you said, that Vaughan is taking initiative on this, and there will be a meeting coming up next week, which we'll chat about sharing your thoughts on the issues you're facing if you live in the community.
Hmm. And as you know, we do live in the community, and we've got kids going to two of the three schools, which these little stars are showing here. And given that this whole area has roughly 1,500 homes, maybe a bit more, and three schools, including a high school, Tommy Douglas at the bottom, you can imagine that a large number of people with kids in these schools are driving in or commuting in one way or another, which makes
Mm.
for some madness. And now with the school start times pretty much
Yeah.
being identical,
Yeah, I think Guardian Angels is maybe 15 minutes
a little bit
behind, like
later.
these
Yeah.
8:15. But Johnny Lombardi and Tommy Douglas both start at 8 a.m., which is, I mean, that's a whole other story of how early that start time is. But we'll leave that for another
Oh,
discussion.
we'll reserve that. Yeah. But it does mean there's a whole lot of cars trying to get into what is, I guess, part of what can't be controlled, which is the footprint of the schools and their driveways. There's only so much can be done there, but it creates madness on the roads. And this study isn't just about the school hour, but I think that that's indicative of how bad and crazy things can get. And I don't know anybody in our neighborhood who hasn't expressed some frustration at the
Yeah,
way traffic is.
exactly. And where we're situated, we're lucky in the sense that on the nicer days, we can definitely walk to school both directions. But there's other people, like let's say if you have a kid going to high school and you're on Stanton, which is like the North Street here, um, walking to Tommy Douglas, like that might not be as ideal or easy to do every single day. So there's lots of cars going around, and today we both drove our kids to school. We split up, and it was raining because, yeah, that's what happens when it's
That's what
raining.
happens on a
We
school
drive
morning.
our kids to school. But everybody else had that same idea. And this is the first time, because our daughter just started at Tommy Douglas, this is the first time I've gone that direction at that time. And the roundabout at Chatfield and Lawford, it was just solid cars. And when people are in a rush to get out of the
Zoom in.
community, yeah. So this little,
Roundabout right here.
oh, no, 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 sorry. Go up to Chatfield and Lawford, like the
Sorry.
actual roundabout.
Oh, the roundabout. Yes, right here.
This area. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, like, first of all, there's a lot of people that don't understand how roundabouts work in general, I find. But when you're dealing with back to back traffic, it can get really hectic. Now, a lot of people were very nice and were giving each other the right of way as they entered and exited through this thing. But there were others that were in a rush to get out and try, to pull around other people. And there's pedestrians as well walking to school, even though it's raining. Good for them. So it just leads to madness, I find.
Mm. Well, and I think most people go directly to speed as the control mechanism. That's what the first study here did a lot of addressing with things like the radar screen and with some extra signage. But really, not that that's not super important, but in addition to that, just the understanding of right of way for people,
Mm.
whatever the speed is, has really contributed to a lot of this congestion and anger on the streets in a lot of places. This roundabout definitely being one of them. As
Mm.
somebody's sort of creep slowing to a stop here as someone else is coming here, who's going to take that circle first, kind of thing. And then
Yeah.
with the number of cars getting on here, it definitely helps slow things down in terms of the incoming traffic. And I guess because of that, the safety of pedestrians and kids and parents who are walking. But it also makes for a gong show and has with the cars that are going through there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we've got three different schools. We've got buses. We have been the holding school for at Johnny Lombardi, at least for the Kleinberg families that have moved into the newer area. Now, one positive thing, and I don't know how much this will impact traffic overall, but next year that there's a new school opening up in that Kleinberg community, which is great. Very happy for them. And hopefully that will alleviate some of the congestion coming into the neighborhood. So not just within the neighborhood, but a lot of people are saying that, even coming into the neighborhood from Stanton, from the other side on Poetry and Major Mackenzie, like those are also issues. So, there's hopefully some light at the end of the tunnel, but we have a meeting coming up next
Hmm.
week. So, let's talk what could be possible solutions. What are the things that we want to, you know, advise the city about?
Absolutely. I think it's important to know that this is, I guess, I don't know if they're calling this phase two. I guess it is phase two. Yeah, I see it down there, phase two. Like there was a phase one that dealt with more the Sedgwick area, which is this
Mm-hmm.
spot on the east side of this. If you live in that area or drive through there, you've probably noticed some changes. That radar screen that's there, there is some additional signage. You maybe have also noticed along Lawford those flexible like yield signs. I don't know what they're called. You know,
Yeah.
those like yellow ones, like they're
Yeah.
barriers that really slow you down.
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to be removed in the winter. I've found out those can't be used in the winter, which is when a lot of this congestion and traffic happens. But in addition to those, phase two is now understanding that this is a study that needs to go beyond just the easternmost barrier of these schools, but all the way around and all the side streets in between. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I think right now, thankfully, the city is doing a public consult.
Mm-hmm.
They did implement the things that were discussed very quickly, which is nice to see. And we're hoping that the same sort of thing happens with this area. But it's now up to, in addition to their professionals, consultants, and engineers who have ideas, it's up to the people who live it every day to speak to our experiences, which either come with ideas we've got or at least help inform the consultants about the sorts of solutions that will help address the problems that we're facing every day.
Yeah. And if you look at the locations of these schools, I don't know another area in Vaughan where we have so much congestion with schools. It's great from a walkability perspective, but when you bring in cars, which is inevitable, I can't think of another area where this is how the schools are laid out. And this is ultimately obviously what's impacting things in the morning trying to get out, is because you've got so many schools in such a close proximity to each other. And obviously, a solution is not going to be, okay, let's tear down one of these schools and move it.
No.
But I think we've got to be looking at the fact that this is kind of a challenging exercise because I believe the planning wasn't done all that great. Like it was poor planning overall,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
in all honesty.
With them being as close as they are and the limited number of quote unquote major streets, which are really just single
Yeah.
lane two-way roads, there's only
Mm-hmm.
so many inroads and outroads literally to get to these. And
Yeah.
even when you move out to Major Mac and Weston, there is more that's being developed in this southeast corner with the way that it's
Mm-hmm.
starting to get more connected. But ultimately, people are now forced to, in their mind, start to take side streets and shortcuts and stop in places they shouldn't just to get to the end place where there's only so much room for cars to go. So when it comes to ideas for solutions, um, I don't know if this is popular or not, but when I looked through the first study and all the different potential solutions there could be, it was interesting that every solution that puts something in, like a sign or a speed bumper or whatever, they come with an associated negative consequence. I didn't see any except for one, which I'm going to get to at the end, but I didn't see any except for one that was just here. This will help address this without anything happening that's bad. So, for example, if you put one-way signs in,
Mm.
it's good to help control the flow of traffic, but this becomes a burden on day-to-day driving life for those of us who live here and just
Yeah.
want to be the local traffic, right? So,
Right.
negative just meaning an inconvenience in one place to help address another problem.
Mhm.
Um, the one thing that is not, I don't think rocket science, but I think needs to be a little bit more communicated, is the idea of the active commute, which is for people, and we're guilty of this, like we just said, we're guilty of this, but for people who are in a certain proximity, there should be more of an effort for people to walk to school, for people to
Oh.
not take cars.
Hmm.
Whether that's a marketing campaign, I mean, it does become tougher in tough weather days. It does become tough as the winter takes over. It's a lot easier to hop into a car that's warm, and maybe people are more willing to sit for 10 minutes for what would be a 5 minute walk, but be in a warm car. But
Mm.
the idea of encouraging people to walk and to, walk with a buddy, walk with your family, whatever it is, carpool, all of these, just these marketing elements that are just asking people to do the smart thing, to me is part of what the solution needs to be, because in at least encouraging and communicating the benefits of those things, it doesn't impact anything else in a negative way by putting something in place. Although I do believe some of the other tools are useful. For me, something that is low cost and moderate impact, but with no negative, that to me is one of the solutions I'd want to make sure is part of this plan in more of a public way.
Hmm. Yeah. And I know that like the schools do encourage that, which is nice, but you're right. I think there needs to be definitely a step up in that regard. I mean, to me, and I don't know if this will help, but I've always thought that delaying the start times of schools and staggering them would help alleviate some of that burden. Because let's say your kid goes to Johnny Lombardi, then you're kind of able to get out either through Lawford or up through Stanton without any extra congestion of other people coming the other way as they drop their kids off at Guardian Angels, that kind of a thing. So I've always heard from the city or from other people that have tried to get changes made in terms of start times, it all comes down to the bus schedule.
Busing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get that. But I think at this stage, we've kind of have to look at, okay, what negative impact, as you said, because obviously there's always going to be a negative impact on something else. But is it from a city budgeting perspective? Is that what it's going to impact? Like maybe are we prepared at this point? Is the city prepared to maybe lose some funds, money, whatever it is, or add extra cost to the busing program in order to make this part of our city run better and be safer for people? Because honestly, I feel like that's the only solution that is actually viable that probably could see some lessening of the burden we're dealing with right now.
I agree with you. I don't know if it's a case of budget where, is it easy to introduce more jobs and a few more physical buses to actually create routes and make it different? Or do you just restagger the schedule? Like whoever's making the
Yeah.
schedule, I want to believe they optimized it as efficiently as possible,
Mhm.
but it's not when three sets of buses and three sets of schools are all ending up in the same place at the same time, right? So if there is, shared um, routes, which is when I grew up, that's how it was. And I don't know if these
Yeah.
buses are dedicated to one school. If they are, then you should just be able to change the schedule for the existing
Yeah.
bus. But my
Yeah.
assumption is maybe Johnny Lombardi is sharing a bus with Glenn Gould across Weston, and one starts
Hmm.
later and one starts earlier. So would
Yeah.
swapping those times have a better
Mm.
impact,
Yeah.
and you keep the bus the same, right? It's
Yeah.
way more complicated than I'm making it sound, but
Well, that's what I was going to say. Because yeah, you're absolutely right. But like then you start thinking about, okay, how is this going to impact people? Because obviously, changing any times on families is going to have a major impact on a lot of
right.
people's schedules and their ability to accommodate and before and after schools and all that kind of stuff. So it's
Mhm.
not like, yeah, we definitely don't want to make it seem like it's an easy solution, let's just snap our fingers and all of a sudden Johnny Lombardi starts at 9 a.m., which would be great.
But, but
From our
that being
perspective.
said, and I know that this is our daughter's first year in Tommy Douglas, so we haven't had the experience, but in being involved this year,
Mm.
Tommy Douglas started later last year. Like this is
Yeah.
the first
Yeah.
year it's starting earlier.
Yeah.
So changing times is not off the table. There's a reason that was done. Maybe that
Yeah.
was also busing, right? So
Hmm.
it's a hard thing to do in school or in season. I understand the year just
Yeah.
started, but if the discussion could start today to refine and optimize these schedules for 2024, I can't see
Mm-hmm.
how that is a difficult thing to put on the table of the person that makes these schedules, right? I remember the song and dance it was going on a tangent when I worked in football, making the football schedule where
Hmm.
teams had to play in certain cities at certain times and all those things had to happen. And that's tough, but it's somebody's job to make it work, to understand where people needed to be when, right? So why
Yeah.
not do that with the bus schedule?
Yeah.
Um, so those are two things, I guess, that don't actually change the physical layout. I don't think anybody's building more roads. I don't think that's on the table. I don't think there's any room for that. It really just
Mhm.
comes down to traffic calming measures like signs and different things that are put in there for people to maybe observe and blow them down or divert them or what have you.
Mhm.
Um, I think a lot of those measures are already there from what I see living in the area. Like there's only so many signs you can put in before it just becomes like, hey, everything's telling me to go a certain way, do another thing. So unless it's legally forcing you in one direction, there's not a lot of things that could be added, I don't believe,
Mm.
to the current signage infrastructure around these schools. Maybe with
No.
the exception of there are no stop signs or signs at the entrances and exits to these schools.
Right. You
I
mean,
don't
yeah.
think,
No, they're not. But I get the sense that that might even slow things down further if you're
probably.
forcing the yeah, that traffic to be stopping every time. But yeah, it's I mean, obviously we're not planners by any means, but from what we can see, these are kind of the options that we could consider. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. And obviously not just here, but also at the in-person open house that's taking place next Tuesday, September 19th. It's actually ironically at Tommy Douglas. So if you haven't
Mm.
been there before, go visit. Check out how challenging it could be to get there. Maybe not at that time, but maybe head out
Let's
at
all
like,
meet there. Yeah, let's all
yeah,
meet there at 5:45 and all of us drive in, and that'll
yeah,
help
and see
inform
what
the discussion.
happens. Yeah.
But this is really as either residents in the area or people who come to the area for school with your kids, this is a really important opportunity for you to listen and make your thoughts heard.
Hmm.
We're residents just like you. We've got ideas, but we also want to hear what's out there and be informed about what the process is going to be.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging that the city is taking a proactive approach to this
Yeah.
and allowing everybody to give their feedback, which I know is the process, but they're listening. And this is something that you should go to. And so you can see here, you can also email comments if you can't make it to the meeting by emailing lawfordstudy@cima.ca by Tuesday the 19th, which is the date of the meeting. I would suspect it's best you share that feedback prior to the meeting, although I don't know if they're going through them in the meeting. Um, and yeah, register. We'll make a link available on where the registration is for this so that you can register for it. Unfortunately, the online survey is already expired, that first link that's up here. But it is just as important, if not more, to go to the meeting and share your thoughts.
So, yeah, we hope you found this helpful. And if you want more Vaughan related community news, feel free to subscribe to our channel. We're putting up updates and new videos each and every week. So, we'd love to have you a part of our community. And with
Great.
that,
Thanks for
have a good
watching.
day.
See you there.
Bye.